You're all set.
Okay, it's 7 o'clock. I'd like to call to order the Burlington Area School District Board of Education meeting. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Toby, the roll call, please.
Roseanne.
Here.
Kevin.
Here.
Susan.
Here.
Peter.
Here.
Barry.
Here.
Diane.
Here.
Taylor.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, the next order of business is the approval of the minutes.
I move we approve the minutes from the February 8th meeting.
Second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve our minutes. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, roll call, please.
Roseanne.
Yes.
Kevin.
Yes.
Susan.
Yes.
Peter.
Yes.
Barry.
Yes.
Diane.
Yes.
Taylor.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank
they
you.
are approved. Okay, the next order of business are the communications. Any board communication anyone wants to mention? Well, then I'll start. I was fortunate enough to hear Mary Trujillo, who is a judge from Milwaukee, and she was talking about what Milwaukee is doing with the trauma in their students and how they're trying to get to babies. They can tell by looking at a 2-month-old baby if they're in trauma. Their eyes are not bright and sparkly. It's really quite sad. But they were talking about when you see a child in trouble, you don't say, like, what's wrong with you? You should say, what happened to you? And they're finding out that the trauma stays in their body forever. It never leaves. And a lot of these kids who are traumatized have been put into LD programs when really that's not what's the matter. But in talking to Steve, we have a really good program that goes right along with that, where our counselors and so forth are trained to watch for the trauma. I found it very, very interesting, and it just gets me enthused to make sure we're taking the best care of our kids. And second of all, Steve and I had a great experience Friday. We were invited to the Wisconsin Academic Decathlon, and there were 9 seniors that were there. Well, 7 because 2 had other commitments, but we had lunch with them. And so I sat down with 2 of them, and we were supposed to spread out. Well, then one of the kids recognized me I used to tutor the brother. So he came over, and pretty soon they were all around the table where I was, and I had more fun with them. You know, it's so much fun to talk to students. They were all seniors. They're delighted with the education they got in Burlington. They were happy. They can't wait to get back if we possibly could, they said. Just smart, good kids, just fun to be around. They talked about their teachers, and they said they never had a teacher they didn't like. And I thought, okay. And they were being really honest because I just let them talk. But it was just a delightful afternoon. Well, it wasn't a whole afternoon, just an hour or so with them. It was a highlight. I thought, in all this problem that we're having now with the COVID and so forth, we're missing out on things like this in talking to kids and finding out what's going on with them. So I don't know if Steve wants to add anything to that, but it was really a great lunch hour.
No, I would just agree. It was a wonderful opportunity. The chances to be in the presence of students have been few and far between in recent days, just simply as we try to, kind of stay in our own spaces as much as possible. So it was really nice to be able to be around students. And frankly, that was one of the last things, Academic Decathlon was one of the last things that happened last March before buildings were closed due to the pandemic. So it was kind of a nice universal gathering, almost a year later to come together and celebrate.
Yep, and they all wore their masks, and the girls all had them matching their outfits. It was really fun. Anyone else have anything they want to share?
Yeah, I'll just say something. I know I already sent an email about the ACE Academy, but I just wanted to give a shout out from the citizen that reached out. Deb Schlitz mentioned she's been working a lot with the ACE Academy and had nothing but positive things to say. So I think that just should be highlighted.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, then we'll move on to the superintendent's report. Steve.
I think in there though, do you want me to cover public comment?
Oh, yes.
Roseanne?
Yes, please.
So, okay, thank you. So just as a reminder, all public comments can be emailed directly to the Board of Education. That email you'll find online, but it is boardcomments with an S at basd.k12.wi.us. So boardcomments at basd.k12.wi.us. Since our last meeting, the board has received 3 communications. 2 of those were to offer some insights regarding a personnel matter. And one of them was to offer some suggestive insight as to a curriculum matter. And I will just highlight that that one came from a student, which is not all that common. And so kudos to that individual, I think, for reaching out to the board to share her thoughts about what could be a good add for some of the things we're doing at the high school specifically. So we had those 3 comments this month. I know the board reads those and rereads them, which is one of the benefits of having them be in written format. To the public that might be listening tonight, we do ask that those comments be able to be read by the board in approximately 3 minutes or less, and that you do include your name and address so that we know that you're a Burlington resident talking to the Burlington School Board. So thank you again. For the superintendent's report, just a couple of reminders and updates and celebrations for the board. One is that tomorrow we will be engaging for those board members that are part of cohort 1 with Payne and Fraser. This is module 4 tomorrow night from 6 to 9 p.m. So I'll see a couple of you there. Also, tomorrow is a big day as quarter 3 officially will come to an end. 75% of the way through the school year, and what a year it's been. So just kudos to everyone on making it this far as well. And on Wednesday, as you know, and we'll talk about a little bit more later, Wednesday was shifted to a fully virtual day. That is vaccination dose 1 for all BASD staff who have yet to be vaccinated and would like to be. So we're excited to be able to offer that. And then certainly just to highlight next week, regardless of what the weather tells us, it is our spring break. It's a little bit earlier than usual because we end earlier than usual per our calendar that was approved, a little over a year ago now. That made last summer really short and this summer a little bit longer to accommodate for construction in the district. And then just a celebration. We had 2 Herb Cole Teaching Fellows this year, and it's not every year that we're able to celebrate that distinction. There are 100 of these staff that are selected every year for this honor. The teacher receives $6,000. The teacher's school receives $6,000. So it's a very generous gift through an endowment by the Herb Cole Association. And I would just offer for you to recognize and hopefully be able to reach out to and celebrate in your own way, both Troy Everson and Susan Dunbar, both from Burlington High School. And just congratulations to them here in this public forum as well. And then just the last thing, because I know it's been on people's minds, we're excited that as far as we know, come Friday, we'll be communicating with all of our elementary school families regarding placement for next year. So as we go to have new boundaries and schools are shifting, that official notification is in the pipeline. We hope is going to go out on Friday, but that's been certainly a long time coming, as you well know, given the work that we did with elementary school attendance boundaries that wrapped up in the fall. So those are my updates and reminders. Appreciate the opportunity to share.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Oh, Steve? Okay. Then we'll go on to the business office, bank statement and bills. Peter?
Yeah, Roseanne, in February 2021, we had total deposits of $9,942,225.25. Withdrawals of $7,083,511.53, leaving a end of month balance of $3,261,213.38. I'll make a motion to approve the February bank statement.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the bank statement. Any discussion? Okay, Toby, all in favor? Roll call, please.
Roseanne,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
and Taylor.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'll go on to the checks. In February 2021, we wrote 89 checks for $1,139,106.78. And I'll make a motion to approve the paying of the bills.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the payment of the bills. Any discussion? Okay, Toby, all in favor?
Roseanne,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
Taylor.
No.
Okay. Moving on to the personnel. Now, I don't know if you want to do it, Diane, or if Kevin wants to do it. Doesn't matter.
I think Diane should do it. She started it. She can finish it, please.
Okay.
Okay, the Personnel Committee met earlier, and we, as a committee, approved the resignation of one certified staff and 4 non-certified staff, and there were no extracurricular resignations or retirements. So I would like to put that in the form of a motion.
Second.
Okay, so moved and seconded that we accept the resignations and retirements of the certified and non-certified staff. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Roseanne,
Yes.
Kevin, Kevin, you're on
I think
mute.
you're-
Yes. Sorry.
Susan,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
Taylor.
Yes.
Okay, at the personnel meeting, we also approved the appointments of 1 certified staff member and 2 non-certified staff members and 1 extracurricular assignment as well. And so I'll put that in the form of a motion.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we okay the appointments made. Any discussion? Okay, we'll have the vote.
Roseanne,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
Taylor.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. All right, moving on. We'll go on to the consent items and the donations. Steve, are you going to do those?
Sure.
Okay.
It's always a fun one to do.
Yeah.
Talk about our donations. This month, the board received 15 separate donations. Donations to the Burlington Area School District as a whole. $500 donation from the Rosa E. Santos Grant Scholarship Fund, and that is from Eric Santos. Also to BASD, $111 to the General Education Fund from Lucky Star, and I'll come back to that in a moment. Burlington High School received $1,000 to the athletic department from Ron and Barb Call. A $50 donation to the Burlington Co-op Boys Swim Program, and that came from the Burlington Coaching Association. 2 donations to WBSD, $350 from Sunny Liquor and Wine, and $500 from Lois Tire Shop. To Cooper Elementary School, $1,000 in Amazon gift card plus school supplies, and that came from Verizon, TTC Verizon, and a $410 donation from Lucky Star. Karcher Middle School, a $154 donation from Lucky Star. I'm rounding them up to the nearest dollar here. Lyons Elementary School, a $25 donation from Lucky Star, and a $99.76 for a student sled and Valentine's Day snacks. And that came from the Lyons Center PTO to be able to do that activity, as well as 3 boxes of face masks from the McGinnis family. To Waller Elementary School, $436 from Lucky Star, and Winkler Elementary School, just under $97 from Lucky Star. And so the total of these 15 donations is just over $5,300. And of them, just a touch over 1,300 was from Lucky Star. And this was from the fundraiser that they ran with us in the fall, where if people come in, a part of their evening bill comes back to the school. And so Lucky Star has been a great partner. We appreciate certainly them doing that as well. So if you would accept those generous donations, that'd be great.
I move we accept these very generous donations to the districts, including the ones at Dyer, which I don't think got mentioned.
Did I pass those? I'm sorry, Barry, if I skipped over those, but then I want to say it was $500 from ExxonMobil for Dyer and just shy of 69 as part of that Lucky Star fundraiser. So sorry if I missed that one.
I second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept these very generous donations. Any discussion? Okay, roll call, all in favor?
Roseanne,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
Taylor.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, we're going to talk about the student travel, and that seems kind of nice to see that on the agenda. Be doing this.
Agreed. We have not seen one of these in a little while, as we haven't been doing field trips and student travel has been highly limited. As you'll note, this is for next November, and this is for the BHS One Act for their travel request to be able to perform again next November. So we're hoping that this is the beginning of a new era, certainly, as we get to become a little bit more mobile once again. So just planning for the best, essentially.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I move we approve the One Act Play travel to La Crosse.
Second.
Stevens Point.
Stevens Point it is.
Mhm.
Peter, did you have a comment?
No, I just pointing.
Oh,
Yep,
okay.
my mistake. Stevens Point.
It's been moved and seconded that we okay the trip to Stevens Point for the One Act Play. Any discussion?
I would just like to ask, is this a bus trip? Do they go by bus? Because I didn't see any cost involved. So I was just curious.
As far as I know, yes, they travel by bus.
Okay.
Anything else? Any other question or comment? Okay, Toby?
Roseanne,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
Taylor.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. All right, moving on. Items for information and discussion. And these are for future topics for consideration. And I'll turn this over to Steve.
Yes, I was just hoping to have the opportunity to, number one on the list, to just foreshadow, and this is kind of apropos given Roseanne's comments earlier about what she had heard from the presenter in Milwaukee, and that is our K-8 counseling team. We want to get back into talking about kids and talking about what's going on in our schools, and thought that it might be great for the board to hear a presentation from the counseling team. So you will hear a little bit on the developmental curriculum that they work on, as well as some of their focus on kids and trauma as well. And so you'll hear a presentation next month from the counselors. Just thought it'd be good to kind of tee that up and kind of get you excited about the fact that that would be forthcoming. The next two are really sort of a question for the board. I'm just looking for a little bit of direction toward the future. One is that there had been some discussion at a prior meeting about reviewing the school board committee structure, the various committees that we have, really kind of looking at them. And I believe I recollect a little bit of banter about maybe waiting until post-board election and seating of officers, et cetera, but just was hoping maybe the board might want to have a little conversation about that or give me a little bit of direction as to when you might want to see that as an agenda item. So that's kind of hence, future topics for consideration. If there's a time that you might like to have that happen, I'm certainly all ears. And in that same conversation, number 3, the suggestion was made for potentially like a WISE Dash demonstration, and just sort of wondering if you'd like to do that as a whole board, or if you'd like to have me schedule that as an aside at a different time. So really these two are just get some clarity about where and when you'd like to have these conversations, if at all.
Well, I'm anxious to hear the K-12 counselors. I think we'll all enjoy that. So anyone else now have some comments on this, or give Steve some direction?
I think for the
we can wait on the committees until after the election.
Yeah, that's fine. And then I think for the WISE Dash demonstration, I'm open to either suggestion, whether we do it all together or if we do it one-on-one. I'm flexible with that.
Well, Steve, how do you feel about that?
I mean, doesn't matter to me. I'm kind of scratching a note here about the review of committees as potentially a May kind of timeline. Maybe the wonder is how many board members are interested in the WISE Dash demo. That might, if you're just not interested in it, you could do that one-on-one, or if you'd all like to see it. I mean, that's really kind of up to the board.
Why don't you just give us a quick review of what it is so people remember?
Okay. You mean, just right now?
Yeah.
So WISE Dash is essentially DPI, for lack of I'm going to just do really high level. DPI has a pretty robust data warehouse that they've been developing for, I would say, really the last maybe 5 years-ish. And there's a lot there. Some of it gets a little bit outdated, but you can look at pretty much anything you might want to see, whether it's attendance rates, graduation rates, performance on student assessments, behavior data, et cetera. And it's all publicly available on this site that is part of DPI called WISE Dash. Having said that, it's a little bit cumbersome to navigate if you've not done it before. And so as people have just been curious about, looking up data or comparing data, that site oftentimes gets referenced. And so I think both Connie and I, and Jill Olschlager for that matter, have kind of just thought, well, if you'd like us to do a little tutorial, we could do that really anytime. If you wanted to wait a little bit, we could wait. If the whole board was interested, we could do that. If it's just 1 or 2 people, we could kind of just sit down and go through it one-on-one. So just wanted to ask.
Okay. Some opinions, board members? How you feel about that?
I'm definitely interested in a refresher on it. If there's not a lot of support for it, otherwise I can do that independently.
Yeah, I'm interested in it too.
I am as well.
Same here.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
Too. Okay, then let's plan that, like you say, maybe for June.
That was gonna be my next question. Kind of your sense of when. I mean, next month is April. We could, but we could do it at any time. I would think that kind of a high level overview is maybe like a 15-20 minute kind of a sort of a, kind of share a screen and show everybody kind of how to get there and how to manipulate it. And I mean, I'm looking at Connie now on my screen. Do you think is 15-20 minutes? You think that's probably enough?
I do, just that I know that next month we do have the counselors and we have 2 adoptions of curriculum materials that I will be bringing to the board next month for approval as well, which I will need a few minutes of time for that. So I'm just thinking about our agenda for next month. So, but 15 to 20 minutes is fine, I think.
Or if it's of interest to the board, if we end up scheduling a special meeting or a little bit of a workshop, we may need to talk about compensation committee or just some other things. So we could put something like a training in alongside something else. So I'll just kind of get that in the queue for when it seems like a good time here in the next, month, if that seems okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
sounds good.
All right, thank you. All right, moving on. Neola recommended revisions and bylaws policies first reading.
Yeah, so we're still playing catch up. And so don't be alarmed. It won't probably always feel this intense as it comes to our work with Neola. But by way of catch up, really what I'm referring to is that, so we started with Neola, as you know, in the spring, and then it took us until late fall before we kind of wholesale adopted all of the drafting that the board policy committee did. And in that time, there were 2 different updates. There was a summer update and then a sort of a midwinter update, which happens every year. There's always 2 updates. So we're playing catch up. This was a update that was issued in December. And so we're now kind of getting around to this as we continue to tweak and get up to speed with Neola and on track for their revisions. And so because this again is relatively new, I'll just talk through the process, one more time so that it's familiar to everybody. And that is that there are 2 types of updates that come out in the every 6-month updates with Neola. One update is technical, and we have, as you know, our bylaw language that is 131.1, which was adopted with our policies, basically says that you give me as the superintendent the right to make the technical edits. And by technical edits, for example, this round, there were 31 technical edits that affected 25 policies. And there are things like we add a legal citation, or there's a definition that's clarified, or maybe the word comment is changed to participant or something. They're very, very insignificant, just technical updates. So all of those updates have been made, and you can see that list in Neola if you want. Those were just made. Then the other type of update are actual policy updates. And the policy updates come to Neola essentially from 2 places. Either one, because statute changes, and so then Neola has to make sure that every policy related to that gets updated in the same way, or they come from the field. So that means that school boards and superintendents like us, we might make a comment to Neola and say, this doesn't seem to read right, or this seems to be problematic. And then they take notes and they go back and make changes. And there have been some notes that the Burlington drafting group brought to Neola that probably will end up being one of these changes down the road. So with that, this time around, all of the affected policies are listed there on the agenda. So I know you've had the chance to kind of go in and peruse those or look at them. I do want to point out just the totality of the changes. There are a total of 38 changed policies, but there are really 27 that are really kind of up for discussion and review. And so the reason I say that is because the other 11, you may have noticed there are 11 policies, and I'm going to call them name, logo, mascot policies. These are policies that there was a holistic legal change that happened around name, logo, mascot. And the short synopsis is that schools, as we've talked often about this, schools have basically the copyright intellectual property of their name, their logo, and their mascot. And the more people that have gotten interested in school logos and mascots and naming are starting to play around and sell things and not get permission from schools, et cetera. And so there are 11 policies that are listed in your summary doc that were affected by the language around name, logo, and mascot, that basically it's this sentence that's tweaked, that policies and guidelines have been revised to include language prohibiting or requiring permission for the use of the district name, logo, mascot, or any other property of the district. This is not something that, in fact, this is the kind of thing that we've been saying we ought to have in policy. And so the 11 policies that are impacted are spelled out there, and it's really just that one sentence that has been altered. So I didn't really think that that was anything you were gonna really get too excited about. But when we go through and look at these policies, I wanted to do two things. One is I wanted to point out two policies to have you really kind of take a good hard look at and talk about if you want. And then I know that you've reviewed these, you may have some questions about one that perhaps I can add some additional narrative to. So the two that I wanted to point out to you are two new policies. They're not revisions, they just really are brand new. And these, really Neola describes these as coming from, really the land of COVID and some of the more recent challenges that boards have faced, really frankly working in this virtual world. So one of them is policy 143.2. And this is really sort of a policy, the name of it is board member information requests. And so what this policy does is it establishes some process or some protocol for board members who are asking for information, essentially. That's the short version. It has been updated in your board docs, and I would certainly welcome or encourage you to look at this, decide, whether or not this is something that you like or dislike as a board or want to talk about as a board, because this is one that, since it's new, I figured you might really want to have a little dialogue about. I don't think there's anything here that is incredibly out of the ordinary or unexpected per se. It is kind of how we function. However, the section that is sort of described in letter B, where it talks about if a board member is asking for administration to compile information which requires lengthy research and investigation, the request should be submitted to the superintendent, who distributes copies to the full board. Or the request will be reviewed at the next meeting, if possible, by the board and superintendent to clarify the request and determine in the context of other priorities if and when the staff should respond to it. That's a little bit different than kind of current practice. And so if this wants, if you want to have drafting of this or look at this one differently, that's why I'm pointing this one out, because I think that this is a little bit different, although seems to kind of make sense generally. But I'm going to pause there and just kind of open it up for you to talk about as a board, and I'll take notes. Toby and I will be paying attention.
Okay, who wants to comment?
I'll start. Steve, where can we find the policy? I'm looking at the, bear with us. I know you've gone through this before, so forgive me, but I'm looking under board docs and under the policies, and then is it under?
It's under draft.
Okay.
So you got to go to draft next. And then if you go under, hold on one second. I got to get there. Wait. I was logged out. Sorry, Peter.
No, I'm sorry.
It's under policy manual and then
there you go.
Ready for review. And then you can scroll down to the number.
Yeah.
Does everybody find that? So draft policy manual ready for review. And then in the drop down, and the one that I'm talking about right now is 143.2, and it says new right next to it on the side.
If it's not long, could somebody read it? Is it real long? Because I don't have it on.
It's a page, a little over a page.
Oh, never mind. Never mind.
I'll just give you my thoughts on it then. I think it's a smart policy because we have to be careful with our resources, right? I mean, I think in the private sector, you would ask, when you make a request of somebody, I think it's important to know how long that request is going to take to comply with. So, and how much effort and time is money, right? So I think it's a reasonable thing. But I don't want to discourage people from asking questions, but if it's going to be something that's onerous, and sometimes you don't know that when you ask a question, you don't know how long it's going to take. So I think that's, it's a good balance between getting information to board members, but also being careful not to overburden our administrators.
I agree with that.
I agree wholeheartedly.
I do too.
Steve, is this something we're looking at adopting as new, or is this a whole new series they put together?
It's only, the only thing that is new is this one, and another one that I'm going to point out here shortly, 144.5. Otherwise, these other ones they're little tweaks, they're revisions. There's been one about library media. They sort of deleted one, but then put it in the other one and added some language. And there's nothing overly of great interest, but these two in particular were new ads. And so I really wanted to point them out because I didn't want to risk the board either, reading through all of it, and it's a lot of stuff, and maybe not quite seeing it or catching on to the fact that it was brand new.
Yep, makes sense. I was just curious if it was something we were adopting new or if it was written new by Neola. It sounds like it's written new by Neola.
Yep, written new by Neola. And I think, again, part of this was, things that they were experiencing in this time of COVID, where because of having less personal interaction, I think there were just more requests coming. And then this found its way into this revision that was December 30th.
Okay, so I think the majority of us thought that was a good. Anyone else want to comment on it? Taylor, I didn't hear from you. Did you want to comment on it?
Yeah, I think it's fine.
Okay. Okay, Steve, I think that gives you a little.
The other one that I was just mentioning to Barry is 144.5. And I should start first by saying that I'm happy that I don't believe that this is a policy really that the Burlington Area School District Board needs. Because when you hear the title alone, you think, oh boy, really? The title is Board Member Behavior and Code of Conduct. So this is, again, coming from this idea that I think there have been some boards really struggling across, I'll just say across the nation. Again, when you're not able to spend a lot of time together in particular. And what you'll see here is kind of a rundown of a number of kind of general expectations. Again, when I read this, I think that we're doing probably 98% of this already. But really, as you can see, it starts off, the board functions most effectively when, and then it goes into describe, kind of acting ethically, professionally, responsibly. Again, behaviors that you would assume, I think, that all of your fellow board members are demonstrating. It goes into, there are some general expectations. Again, pretty hard pressed to think that anybody wouldn't be doing this. Being familiar and following applicable local, state, and federal laws, complying with our own board policies, conducting ourselves with integrity, being accountable, to constituents, et cetera. There's a little section on board communication. And then it gets a little bit long-winded, frankly, as some of the Neola language does. But the part that I think is kind of interesting is how this section that is titled Board Member Interaction with Staff. And really, we want to make sure that you have access to talk to people as you do now. And so we were the opening sentence, the general expectation of board member decorum and civility apply to interactions with employees. It doesn't say don't talk to employees. It just simply says be nice about it, which again, I think is the experience that I've had working with all of you. So I don't see that as a new or different kind of thing. A little section on confidentiality, and then a section at the end, which I find interesting, but it's really like, how do you hold one another accountable? And there's a little section that just talks about how you might go about, talking to each other if you felt like somebody was sort of violating those norms. But again, this was not an existing policy. So, we don't have to accept it unless you think, wow, this really just does spell out like, yeah, we should behave this way. And if you believe that, then we can leave that in, or you could change some part of it as you see fit. I went through this one with Richard pretty carefully to try to make sure that it seemed like it read like Burlington. And I feel like that's accomplished, but it's entirely up to you if you want to change or edit that further, or if you generally think it's okay, then can have that be part of the first reading with the other ones here.
Personally, I think it's okay. We have WASB, so I think it's a good thing to have. Let's have some more opinions on it.
I think it's a good policy too, because I think right now we're not maybe dealing with some of those situations, but someplace in the future we may. And I think it's a good policy to have, just kind of code of conduct in a lot of different regards, in private and public sector.
I think it's a good policy too, and it's just good to have everything spelled out just like it is.
Peter?
I agree. I'm echo Kevin and Susan's comments too. I think it's smart to have for the future, just in case.
Diane?
I agree. And I really feel for those boards out there that might have to be dealing with these kinds of issues. But, thankfully we aren't. And let's hope that continues on to the future. But it's a good policy to be there.
Okay, Taylor?
I agree.
Okay, Barry? I think you said you already agreed.
I think it's appropriate that we have a policy. If I've got any
You're muted.
If I have any specific objections or anything, I'd bring them up at the second reading, but I believe we should have this policy.
Okay, Steve, does that give you direction?
It does, it's great. Then my only other question is, as you look at any of these other ones, if you're seeking any kind of clarification or, hey, I see this one, what changed? I've got some pretty copious notes in front of me just about the specific language that existed before, what exists now. So if there's just any other questions on any of the other ones that are being edited, certainly happy to do my part to explain. I'll point out one other one that I find really interesting, and it's policy 5511. It's about dress and grooming. This is always, an interesting one as it pertains to students. And essentially, you'll see that this is a little bit more prescriptive and detailed about really the language for years in schools has been, what attire causes a disruption. This starts to try to define a little bit what that is, because there's been some challenges to that in the legal system. So I just found that one to be interesting, but you might find some other one to be really interesting too. So, and that one was a Wisconsin case that I'm just happen to be familiar with. So.
Okay. Any more comments on the what we've been discussing? Okay, yes, Diane.
Okay, I was curious about policy 2522, library media center, and I was just curious, do we have a library media plan?
So here's what's fantastic. Right now, what is happening is that 2522 is something that is supposed to come to the board. And so what Connie doesn't even know is I was going to talk to her about this, because I'm going to guess that you've not seen this in a while. And it's fascinating that you catch that one, Diane, because on my notes, it says double check on this one. because I don't know if we do have a plan. Connie might know, but I don't want to put her on the spot because it's the second sentence here well, I'm not sure if it's the second sentence in what you're looking at, but requires that a long-range plan be in development, approved by the board, and that it's led by the district's licensed library media specialist. So we have a licensed library media specialist. I'm going to guess there's probably a plan somewhere, and it's just not one that you've seen recently. And part of the reason that Neola put this in as a quote unquote new policy is because they know virtually everyone is in the rears on this and hasn't done it. And so they're trying to draw attention to it. So I will say good eye, Diane, because that's exactly what Neola is trying to do here. And I don't know, Connie, do you know anything more about if there has been a plan or if it's come in front of the board?
There has been a plan, but it's been quite a while since it's come before the board. So we will certainly see that it gets presented to the board.
The question, is that Sally Nye? Is she the one that's in charge of that?
But we have two. We have Sally Nye and Suzanne Dunbar.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, any other questions?
Well, I had one more.
Sure.
Okay, I noticed when you get way down to the end, there's some administrative guidelines. And I guess I was surprised because I know about first readings and second readings of policies, but I was surprised to see administrative guidelines also included.
Those don't pertain to us. I left them in there as part of the PDF because it was part of the package that Neola presented, but we haven't adopted administrative guidelines yet because we're still in the drafting phase. So these will not go into our book.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, and we have no action on that, correct?
Toby, we don't, with the first reading, we don't need action, correct?
That's what I thought. Okay, so then we'll move on to items for action. And I think Dan Bocock is going to do this. Talking about Karcher Middle School furniture and the vendor.
Yes, so just a brief history of to get to where we're at now. Back in the fall, we presented to the board 3 different vendors to help the district with the furniture needs and layout for Karcher. At that time, you folks approved EBI, Emmons Furniture, to help the district with those needs for $16,250. It was also pointed out that at that time, if that vendor does get approved for the actual furniture bid itself, that they would waive those fees as well. So then during the past several months, Jill, Karcher staff, and myself met with EBI, discussed different furniture layouts, what type of furniture we were looking for, and worked closely with the building plans. And then Jill set up mock classrooms for teachers to come in and test out the furniture that was available. So from there, then Emmons developed the RFP for the school district, which you folks can see there in board docs. And then we sent that out to bid. I sent that out to 5 different furniture vendors, Marshfield Book, Henriksen, EBI, Verco, and Demco. I heard back from 2 of them that they wouldn't be bidding on it at this time. And then we received 3 bids back from Henriksen, Emmons, and Marshfield Book. Henriksen did not have a complete bid as they could not provide us with several of the items that were specified in that bid form. And Marshfield Book and Emmons were the only 2 complete bids, and then that followed everything that was in the RFP. Marshfield Book's total cost for the furniture was roughly $700,000, and EBI's cost for the complete furniture package was roughly $692,000. Another thing that EBI is Emmons, sorry, it pointed out was that we could use some of our own students and staff if they want to help out with the assembly of the furniture, and that they would knock off an additional $5,000 of that cost as well. Jill worked with them
significantly through these past several months, and we've gotten a good working relationship. So my suggestion to the board would be to approve Emmons for the furniture package for Karcher Middle School for the $692,200.18. One thing I'd like to also point out is that we did budget $650,000 for furniture in our FF&E, and that we still have $75,000 left in contingency money with that, with the Karcher GMP.
Thanks for that last little bit, Dan, because I was just going to ask for a reminder of what we had budgeted in the GMP, but why we're doing this one, because this isn't one that Shear does as a construction management piece. So thank you.
Anyone have any questions?
Do we still, so you mentioned earlier that there was a fee that they charged if they were not awarded the bid. Is that encompassed in that number?
That is not encompassed in that number. They would just waive that amount.
So if the other bid was awarded, we'd have another $16,000.
Yes, you're correct.
I make a motion to approve that bid. Award of EBI.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the EBI estimate for the furniture. Any discussion?
Dan, is this the entire furniture then that would be used at Karcher? Or are we bringing any of the furniture we're using currently at the building over?
There are some select items that Jill has purchased in the last, within the last 5 years that we are reusing. There's a bunch of fish, kind of fish looking tables. And anything that we felt, we did a complete survey of the building and anything that we felt we could reuse, but it is predominantly all new furniture, and it encompasses the band area, the commons, the library. So it's going to be extremely nice to have, this sort of collaborative and good work, furniture that's designed, for this building as well.
Very good. Any other comments or questions? Okay, then we'll have the roll call vote.
Roseanne?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Barry?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Taylor?
We didn't hear you, Taylor.
I said yes.
Okay. Okay, it passes. Thank you very much, Dan, for all your help tonight in explaining it to us.
Yes,
Okay, next we're going on to liquidated damages waiver request, and I think Ruth is Ruth going to do this one, or are you, Steve?
I'm happy to do it.
Okay.
This was the request that originally had come to the Personnel Committee by Andrea Donegan requesting waiver of liquidated damages. And because it sort of stalled in committee, I was being brought to the full board for you to decide whether or not you would approve that request. And we did reach out to her to make sure that she understood that it would occur in a full open meeting, just to make sure that she was, all right with that. And she said yes. And so it's in front of the full board for consideration here this evening.
Is she finished as of now?
I do believe yes.
So who is taking her load now? Who is doing her work?
It's essentially being distributed among other colleagues.
Okay, because isn't there one that's just part-time? One of the counselors?
We do have one counselor that is part-time, but as Steve said, we've just shifted some of that workload. Becky Hosley will be doing a predominantly most of that, but other elementaries may be supporting through the testing season for sure here.
Okay, thank you. So are we looking for a motion then for this, Steve, to decide if we're going to charge her that or not? Is that what it is?
Yep, ultimately this would be an action item for the board, yes.
Okay. Well, I move that we, if nobody's going to make a motion, I move that we waive that for all the work she's done for the district.
Is there a precedent set?
We've waived it for other people, I know. But I don't know. It's up to you people.
Is this a unique situation?
I don't know if, to what degree you would, want to describe unique. She had an opportunity, took a position at DPI. DPI doesn't tend to bring people on or let people go along the lines of what we would consider a school year calendar. And so I believe she started with them perhaps March 1st, if memory correct is somewhere in there, serves correct. Precedent, it's hard to say. I believe personnel committee and the board had 2 that they waived earlier this summer and coming into the fall for various reasons. Oftentimes it's not, but ultimately that is your call and based on the circumstances of the situation. It's the best I can do, Kevin, to try.
No,
I hope
understood. Perfect. No, it's perfect.
Okay.
Okay, if there's no second to that motion, then I guess we'll need a different motion.
I'll make a motion that we do not waive the liquidated damages clause.
I would second that motion.
Okay, it's moved and seconded that we do not waive that clause. Any more discussion?
I'll just say I appreciate Ms. Donegan's service to the district. I know she's been here a long time. I think it sets a bad precedent, and I don't know if this, there's an extenuating circumstance here that she's leaving for another job. That happens, and it's not that large of a liquidated damage clause, but I think we should uphold it. It's our practice and policy.
Well, then I think we should uphold it at all times and not make any exceptions, because we have made exceptions. That's my opinion on it. So, anybody else? Okay, Toby, the roll.
Roseanne?
No.
Kevin?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Barry?
Yes.
Thank you. Diane?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And now we go to Ruth. I jumped ahead too quickly there. Okay, this is the resolution authorizing the transfer of funds and so forth. So Ruth, you want to take that over?
I do. Good evening, everybody.
Hi.
So I don't know if you recall last month, we had a little teaser that this was going to be appearing on tonight's agenda. So last fall, when we approved the tax levy for the 2021 school year, I don't know if you recall, we were able to keep our levy flat. We had no increase, but also in keeping with no increase, we were able to levy almost an additional $574,000 to be used toward prepaying some of our long-term debt. So now is the time when we have to take action to actually make that happen. So those funds will be applied toward, it's the majority of our debt from the November 2018 referendum. It was an April 1st, 2019 borrowing. The thing that's a little tricky is by prepaying it, it doesn't quite work like your house mortgage. You can't just always make the payment. So in this case, the debt, the soonest the debt, we can make payments on that. That's called, the debt is callable. And the soonest that can happen is April of 2027. So what happens is we put money into an escrow account now. That escrow account will earn a little bit of interest, and then that escrow agent will continue to make those principal and interest payments between now and April of 2027. They will notice the borrowers that we're calling that debt, and the actual payment will happen at that time. But the minute we put the money into the escrow funds, we're able to like take it off of our books and our financial reporting. So once we put it into the escrow account, it's like we've made the payment. So behind the scenes, that's not going to actually happen until 6 years from now. And that process is called defeasance. So we're taking it off our books, but the payments will continue behind the scenes. So here's the part I think is interesting. So it's a thank you, board, for making a great financially responsible decision, because if we start looking at these numbers, you're going to see it's a great return. I don't know if you want me to can try to do a screen share to show this one document. No, I guess I can't. I don't know how, sorry. I don't know how to get it on my screen. Sorry, there's the one that's called defeasance summary. So it has it's in the public view too. So it has the couple of different charts on it, summary of cash defeasance. So the first box on the left shows our existing debt as it is right now, the principal column, and you can see the interest rates in the total. The second box, and don't get too hung up on the numbers here, I'm going to show you the column I want you to really pay attention to, is called after defeasance. So principal amount is going to stay the same all the way down until that very last payment in 2039. So that's where we're going to apply $520,000 of principal payment, which isn't going to really happen until April of 27. So we're going to make that principal payment, but what that does is all these years in between 2021 and 2039, there's interest payments on that $520,000 that will go away. So if you look at continue on the next column after those two boxes where it says reduction in Fund 39 debt service, where it has all those amounts of $18,200 every year. So by paying that $520,000, $18,200 of interest goes away all those years. So a total of $838,500 is what we're actually, that's the effect of putting that money into the escrow. So if you can continue down a little bit, we're putting $585,000, $316,000 into escrow, but we're avoiding $838,000 of $500 of payments. So our net savings is $238,000. Wow. So on a $585,000 investment, we're saving $238,000, which is like a 40% rate of return. So I think that's phenomenal news. It makes great financial, it's a financially sound decision. So the final thing we have to do then is the other item that's attached is the resolution, which we needed to make this official. So in that resolution, what you're doing is actually saying you want to establish this escrow account. We're going to name Associated Trust Company as the escrow agent, which is the one we use for all of our debt transactions. You're saying we want to actually transfer the money to put into that escrow account, that $585,000. There are some professional services that we've used as part of this process. So for example, Robert W. Barrett and Company, they're our general financial consultants. Quarles and Brady's bond counsel, Associated Trust is the escrow, and then there was a CPA firm that verified the transactions. Also in that resolution, you are at this time directing the escrow agent that you want to call that debt on April 1st of 27. So again, we're taking action now for something that will happen in the future. And the final thing is that if there's any other documents that need to be signed, that Steve and I could do that, or that you are actually directing us to carry out these transactions like the actual transfer of the funds. It's scheduled for March 22nd. So I think that's pretty much everything that I wanted to say on that, unless there's any questions.
So we need a resolution, we need a motion to approve this resolution. Is that correct?
Yes, please.
Okay.
I move we go ahead with the resolution authorizing the transfer of funds, the establishment of an escrow account with respect to and the defeasance of certain of the general obligation refunding bonds dated April 1st, 2019, as noted by Ruth and executed by Ruth and Steve as necessary.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded for that motion. I'm not going to repeat it. Any discussion on it?
I know we talked about this at the last meeting, Ruth, and you've touched on it briefly. Remind us or remind me, because I can't remember. Where does the money come from? Because we're essentially taking roughly around 520,000. We're paying that down, and over the long haul, we're going to be saving interest, kind of like prepaying the mortgage on your house.
Correct.
Although it's not the same mechanism, I get that. Where is that 520 coming from?
So the tax levy that we levied this year. So it's part of our debt service fund levy for this school year. So we approved levying that additional $574,000. So part of that, putting that aside into escrow, covers that $520,000.
Okay, so we decided to levy to the max this year. Is that what you're saying? As a school board, is that part of this, or?
Well, the debt service is over and above your general fund levy.
Okay, so it's two separate things. Okay.
Correct. The debt service levy.
Oh yeah, now I remember. Okay, it's all coming back to me now. It's like a little light went on. I recall in February we made a decision how much we were going to levy for this special Fund 39. This is not the general fund.
Correct. Fund 39. Nice.
And we could have gone higher and maybe defeased more, but then the tax rate would have gone up. And I think we made the decision because we were able to keep taxes at the same mill rate, essentially.
Yep. So we levied as much extra as we could and still leave that tax levy, that grand total tax levy with the 0% increase. It
was only a month ago, but boy, I can't remember.
No, but I'm still floored on like 585,000 will save you 238,000. Like that's awesome.
Yeah. To say we're saving taxpayers almost $250,000. So great job, Ruth.
Well, thank you. It's everybody.
I was going to say, Peter, if you keep explaining it like that, so with such clarity, people are going to come after you. They're going to want you to do budget presentations.
There you go.
I'll leave that for Ruth.
We'll take you.
Okay, any other questions or discussion? If not, we'll vote on the motion. Toby?
Roseanne?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Barry?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth, for all that information. Okay, moving on. We have Steve with the COVID update.
Yes, so essentially there are two pieces of this, and I listed this on the agenda so that if the board ends up deciding that they want to take action on this, that you can. Otherwise, maybe it's a discussion. Don't really know. But essentially, there's sort of two parts to this. One is I did want for the board to know and be able to talk about the sort of vaccine update and protocol that came to us from Central Racine County Health Department. We got notified about a week and a half ago. It basically said, hey, guess what? We're going to have X amount of doses. We've got these 3 dates in March, the 9th, 10th, and the 11th. And, basically send us your people. So we started talking to, Central Racine County Health. We didn't get to pick the dates. The times that they have essentially are kind of, first shift business hours, 8 to 4 sort of a thing. So, some people have asked me about why not spring break. Well, we didn't get to pick, or why not evenings or weekends again? We didn't get to pick. What we were able to do though, and I think it's important to note the cooperation, we were able to work with the other public schools within the Central Racine County Health Department geographical range, which is essentially Waterford, Union Grove, and us, so this side of the interstate, to make sure that we could do this with as little disruption as possible. And it just so happens that tomorrow on the 9th is the statewide ACT, so there was really no high school group that wanted to get involved in trying to do vaccinations tomorrow. And so we were able to work with Waterford K-8 graded, all the feeders into Waterford Union and all the feeders into Union Grove Union. And all of them, those folks signed up for tomorrow, the 9th. Then BASD captured, we'll do the 10th, which is Wednesday. And then Waterford Union and Union Grove High are going to use Thursday. And so that seemed as least disruptive as possible. And it's been pretty slick. Our staff have been able to sign up since Friday night, and that closed late Sunday. And so everybody should be set who wants to receive a vaccination. And that includes our food service and bus driving staff as well, for this week, Wednesday, for the first dose. And then exactly 3 weeks later on the 31st would be the second dose. We'll do the same thing relative to trying to have as little disruption as possible. Having said that, we also know that there are some folks maybe within the organization that can't make one of those 2 dates happen. And so we're also fortunate that Central Racine County Health has been working with Aurora Burlington to be able to have somewhere between 50 and 70 doses available there starting next week. So for some of our substitutes or other folks, we've got kind of a backup plan as well. And so really just want to express appreciation to all the folks that had a hand in making sure that we were taking care of our staff, so that we can ensure that we can keep going and stay healthy as we get into this final quarter of the school year. The other piece is, I know the board has been hearing a fair bit, as have I, about, hey, are we then going to be coming back to school full time? And so I did want to put that out to you, whether you want to kind of, how you might want to navigate that conversation here this evening, but to talk about what I know is something that you've heard a fair bit about, and that is the possibility of returning to a full-time in-school model to finish out the school year, particularly following the vaccination of staff. So just kind of want to put that out there. I'll certainly do my best to answer any questions that you may have as you traverse that conversation as well, to see wherever that might go.
So what dates are we looking at, Steve?
Well, I think, ultimately, it's up to the board. If you want us to pursue having a return, we've been talking internally for a little bit about, what that might look like, so that we can just be prepared. We think some changes would need to be made to the way that we cohort the pre-K through 6. We believe that at least one of the grade levels from the middle school would have to physically move, but that would be the only movement. And then, as we look at calendars, I guess, if our second dose for our adults is the 31st, if that plays into your decision, we have spring break is next week. Second dose is the 31st. Easter's right then the weekend after. We have an in-service for staff on April 5th. So those are kind of the key big benchmarks on our calendar that may influence the when or where that might happen if you wanted to go in that direction.
Are you talking about April 6th?
April 6th is a Tuesday, and if that was a desired timeline, that would put us, I think it's about seven weeks to the end of the school year. I do think, we're unsure exactly you know, would it be like that day, or would we need to look at the AB rotation and figure out, oh, well, actually it's maybe Wednesday or something? I don't have, because I didn't know where this was going to go, I don't have some really hard recommendation. I think it's more of you saying, kind of as you did in the summer as a board, you know, in July, you said, hey, we want you to pursue this hybrid model, make sure it's ready to go. And then we kind of took that and went with it. If the board said tonight, we're not interested, we want to leave it as is, we think it's working, it's good, we would certainly work through that and make it work. If you said, no, we want everybody back and kind of a target date, we would work to make that happen as well. And then we'd look at, you know, do people have to move and bus routes, and we'd work through all those details and start communicating with families as soon as we had information to share.
So how do you feel, board members?
Just seems with, you know, just over 30 days left of school, that it doesn't make a lot of sense to do that at this point. I mean, these kids are already in they're kind of in their regiment. The families are in the regiment. And I don't know what other companies are doing as far as going back to work, whether it causes problems with families from that regard. But it just seems to me that with, you know, basically just over 30 days left, we got to stay the course and finish the way we started. And if we have to fix it next year, we'll have to fix it next year. That's my gut feeling.
I've got to take on it. I mean, my initial thought was, let's wait till all the teachers have their second vaccine. And I think it's 2 weeks that it's been recommended, but you know, after that to be fully effective. But I'm not a doctor or pandemic expert. So I looked at the CDC, and they're saying in districts or regions of the country where the transmission rate is low, and fortunately here in Racine and Walworth County, we are pretty low. I mean, we're under 10. I believe it's cases per 100,000 right now. I mean, we've been that way for a little while, and let's cross our fingers it stays that way. The CDC is saying get back to school. I understand where Kevin's coming from. There's a disruption. There's no easy answer here, but I think it outweighs. I like the idea of getting kids back in class in 7 through 12 full time. Some kids are doing okay with this, but other kids are really struggling, and it's a challenge. And I know in my house I have one of each. So I know one kid who really wants to get back to school full time, and it's not. I'm not saying it for that, because I know there's a ton of kids in our district who want to go back full time, and even if it's only for 6-7 weeks, I think that will make a huge difference for some of these kids to finish the year strong.
Peter, I can respect that, but I have friends in East Troy, McGuanago, Waterford. They've been going this whole time. They never stopped. So why would we change course is my regard that these kids, I totally understand what you're saying. I get it, that there's kids that are not doing as well as they could because there's not as much discipline. There's not as much, maybe someone at home, maybe there is someone at home and they're not, but we chose this course. My feeling is we stay the course for the next 6 weeks and figure it out. That's just my opinion.
You know, the CDC is saying that in order to get kids back, we have to follow a few things. And one of those things is to socially distance the kids in the classrooms. How are we going to do that? I just don't know what your plan is to be able to do that. What about ventilating the classrooms? How are you going to ventilate every single classroom? Do you have a plan for this? I got to say, I agree more with Kevin as far as this, especially the timeline that we've got going right now.
You know, it's interesting too. I think, Susan, that the CDC recommendation was social distance to the extent possible. We should also make sure they also highly recommend that we wear masks. So I don't think there's any discussion, or at least in my mind, that masks are a requirement through the end of the year, or at least until recommendations change. I get the socially distancing is, if we're going full time, it's not going to be, but you know, frankly, it's probably not happening as much as we probably like in our schools anyways right now. I don't know about ventilation. I think some of the stimulus money is to improve ventilation. Maybe Dan can speak to that. I know we've done some work on improving ventilation in the schools.
Yeah, we didn't go to the extent of any ionization or any of the other units that you can install in your HVAC systems, particularly because we've got a lot of univents, so it would be extremely cost prohibitive. And what we have done is increase the amount of air exchanges we have in the buildings by increasing our outside air and having our air handling units run pretty much nonstop when anybody's occupying the building. But there is funding available for additional steps that you can take for your HVAC units.
Okay. And I should just add to Susan's comment. I did have some discussion with folks from County Health and did as much say as, you know, if we're running, you know, full on 5 days a week, we can certainly make every effort to do social distancing. And I recognize that generally speaking, that's not going to be a mitigation strategy with everybody back full time. As a result of that, one thing that would have to change if that's the direction the board went is that we'd have to return to a full 14-day quarantine because that's kind of the trade-off, is that if you can't demonstrate that you've had the social distancing, the contact tracing, should you have a positive, will probably get a little bit just harder to do, frankly. And those people that would be quarantined would be a full 14-day. Having said that, I think Peter's comment is the other sort of obvious one. The health department would say, you know, if you're going to come back, you have to keep the masking up. That's especially in light of the fact that social distancing is perhaps then not really a mitigation strategy any longer because you're going to have some densely populated areas. We would still do everything we could at certain times of the day, before and after school, lunches, passing, et cetera, to try to minimize that. But at the end of the day, it's not going to really change the classroom environment.
Okay, well, I'd like to see them go back. I think Waterford, Union Grove, they've all gone back full time. And I respect Kevin and Susan's concern. I understand that, but I think they have okayed at other places to go back. So I'd like to see our kids get that experience of ending, especially the seniors, to ending their school life in school. Diane or Taylor?
Yes, Steve, you said that one of the grade levels was going to have to move in this if we go back full time.
We think so. I think honestly it's a little bit up for debate. At this point in time, I'm not sure we have a real hard line answer as if that's going to be necessary. It might be. We've talked about the possibility of moving grade 8 back to Karcher. They know the building. They might want the opportunity to kind of end their year there. But depending on how we might craft a schedule for the high school kids to be back full time, we might be able to make it work there. Don't really know yet. And I think that ultimately that decision would be made following a board directive to, you know, get kids back.
Okay, Taylor.
Thank you. Yeah, so obviously I've been out talking to a lot of people, and I think the message has been abundantly clear that they want the kids back in the classroom to finish the year out strong, to kind of touch base with what Peter said. Obviously, all the concerns that have been brought up are valid. I think the administration did a fantastic job crafting the hybrid model plan. So I have the utmost confidence that with us moving forward to bring the students back into the classroom, the plan they come up with will be just as stellar as the hybrid model that they came up with prior to this. So I'm in support of getting the kids back into the classroom to finish the year strong and to bring back some sense of normalcy for them, especially as Roseanne said, for some of the seniors in their final weeks in their senior year. So again, I have no doubt that whatever plan we come up with, safety for staff and students will be of the utmost importance and at the forefront of every decision made. So that's my 2 cents.
Barry, did you want to comment?
Yeah, like most things, no matter what plan we come up with, people aren't going to be happy. But with that in mind, our focus has to be on the safety of the students and the safety of the staff. I'm very much in Kevin's court of, you know, another transition. We changed our middle school specifically to reduce transitions, and now we're throwing one in the tail end of the year. And I thought long and hard about that and had some discussions. And I think the overwhelming sense is that, you know, the students' well-being and mental health outweighs that concern of the transition. Yes, transitions aren't great, but these students really need to get back into school, get back into routine, and do what they need to do. That said, I believe our diligence to get the staff vaccinated and give ourselves the appropriate amount of time to get this planned and strategized is paramount to the success of it. So I know people want their students back in class yesterday, but I think the 6th is a realistic target for the district to implement what they need to implement. And everyone needs to understand that, you know, we want to get students back. We want to put them in the best learning position we can. But frankly, if we have another outbreak, we're going to have to regress back into a hybrid model again. That's just the way it is. We can't fight Mother Nature. So I think it's time to make these attempts, as long as everyone understands that we need to make it carefully and that we may have to regress if things don't go well. So I would support going back on the 6th.
Okay, anybody else have a comment?
So when a student gets COVID, what happens at that point with the classroom that they're in? Do we just, who goes back to the hybrid model? Does the entire class? Does the entire school? How does it work?
I mean, in some ways, Susan, I mean, that's been sort of our journey this whole year. So if a student, you know, tests positive, I mean, part of our hope is that they haven't been in school, that, you know, we're really trying to coach kids and families that if they're not feeling well, they stay home. That has proved to be really taken very seriously by the preponderance of our families. And as such, we haven't had, you know, the experience of like massive community spread or, you know, taking out whole hordes of people. There have been a couple that have affected lots of folks, but the general experience that we've had so far is that people have sort of isolated themselves by not feeling well, and then it hasn't become this tremendous landslide. The other reality is that because we've been in this hybrid and social distancing, we've been able to contact trace a little bit more easily. That would perhaps get to be a little bit more complicated, and not entirely sure, you know, how that'll play out. So, you know, I'm not sure there's a real short answer to your question about who does it affect. It depends how long they maybe have been in school or who they've like really been in contact with. It's different at different age levels in terms of how much movement there is. And so I just think that becomes a little bit, you know, difficult to figure out. You know, we try to keep it as minimal as possible and try to be very thoughtful about how close people are to one another and how much time they're spending next to each other. But again, if everybody's back, some of those efforts are going to be lost.
And our major barrier, go ahead.
I'm sorry. So I just have to ask. So I asked earlier in the week if the vaccine, I know my dog, she's really pissed about this conversation, by the way. She doesn't want JJ to go back. Not now, not ever. But anyways, that's besides the point. She doesn't get a vote. So the vaccine is only for the students, correct? Or only for the teachers, correct?
That is correct.
So how many, I mean, look at the student to teacher ratio. How many students are getting vaccines? And how many of them are going to go about life as usual? And how many of those students' parents have qualified for the vaccine. I asked earlier, do we as school board members, because I'd like to get it, frankly, I'd get it. Do we qualify as a person part of the school board? And I haven't had an answer on that. So we're gonna vaccine all the teachers, but we're not gonna worry about the kids. And the student to teacher ratio is, let's say 25-1. So who do we really care about? Do we only care about the teachers, or do we care about the students and their families for the next 6 weeks? That's my question.
I don't know if I can answer this, or I'll throw my 2 cents in. I think there's been evidence that the transmission rate from between kids is lower than it is between adults. I think that's one factor why we are choosing not to vaccinate kids. And I've read that, in fact, we may not be vaccinating kids until this fall. It could be like October, November before we get around to vaccinating kids. We don't know, though. It's evolving very fast. Maybe it'll be faster. As it all depends on how fast the vaccine rolls out. But very well, we may be back in September without kids being vaccinated. But I think that's the theory, Kevin, is that the teachers are the ones who are more likely to contract COVID in the classroom as opposed to the kids. And that's why it's viewed by the CDC as safe. Of course, it's a whole balancing act too. It's the risk of the mental well-being of the kids versus.
I understand. We chose this theory. We should stick to our theory.
And I hear you. Susan, you raised a good point though too with the one point the CDC did recommend as part of their guidelines for school districts is, to the extent possible, keeping kids together in cohorts and small groups. And it's exactly what you're saying. If there is a outbreak or there's a student who gets COVID, that you can contract trace as best you can. Jill this will be her job, and she's been doing this all year. Personally, we've been affected. We've had quarantines here. I mean, it's going to be ongoing, but it may be more difficult too.
I do think, Kevin, if I have heard correctly through at least the health department that we talked to, board members did not qualify because they talked about kind of quote unquote direct contact with kids. That's probably debatable, but I think if that's at least the answer you're looking for, that was my understanding in talking with our local health department.
I'm totally okay with it. I'm just trying to piggyback on an opportunity. That's all.
Yep. No, I get it. And I don't know, from what we're hearing, it reinforces what Peter said. We're hearing that students are really just in the trial phase with those 18 and under right now, and that we might not see that till fall or even winter in terms of students. And I do know that the reality for us, right, wrong, or indifferent, is the times where we've had to really get serious about shutting things down was because we were not able to staff a classroom, a grade level, a school. We knew that probably going in that the biggest challenge was going to be having adults out and not able to be there. So, all good points, all good discussion.
I just want to say that I'm not a scientist and I don't read all the scientific information, but I do know that in the world that I walk in, the majority of the time, if they track it back, it was a child that passed it on to a parent or a grandparent, as opposed to a parent being out and about and not being safe about washing hands and wearing a mask. And I have no factual evidence on this. I just know that the people that I deal with that have had it contracted through their family, more than likely they found that came from a child. So I don't have no evidence on it. There's no factual information. I just think that we chose this course. There's 6 weeks left. We should stay with the course. Either that, or looking back, we should have done like East Troy and McGuanago and Waterford did, because they haven't been out of school more than 2 weeks this whole time. And I guess the ACT scores will tell the story.
Okay, any other comments?
Okay, so I just am wondering, physically, you are going to be taking the 8th graders and you're going to be putting them back at Karcher. Is that correct? Do I understand that?
I would say maybe. And again, you know, we've invested some time and thought in, okay, if the board says, yep, we want to do this, we will get down to business really fast and spend the time to look very, very carefully at the capacity of the building, BHS, where grades 7 through 12 are. If we can make it work without moving anybody, I think that would be desirable. But if we can't and need to move a grade level, that would likely then be 8th grade, yes.
Are there enough students who are in the JEDI program to offset the numbers 7 through 12?
If I'm understanding the question correctly, then no, there is not.
Okay. I just curious how much that would be bringing down the numbers of students as far as social distancing would go. If that would make there's enough to make an impact.
No, I mean, it's not even 200.
That's about 80 students.
I was going to say, and at the secondary level, it's not even half that. So 80, yeah.
Okay.
So will parents have a choice here if they don't want their kids to come back? Would they have a choice not to send them back and to continue remotely?
I don't know the answer to that, Susan. I think if you're asking me, I would say I don't think we could do that. The reality is that the burden that places on staff to try to teach the kids in front of them and also some group of kids that are out in the virtual land, I would argue that defeats the purpose. And we've had more struggle than not in terms of student engagement in the virtual space. So it would be, my thought is if the board was to say, no, the return is that we're all coming back, the students that are in JEDI would stay in JEDI. The students that are doing Ingenuity at the high school or who are doing the virtual option at the middle school would finish out as they started. But those other students that are part of our traditional experience right now, they would, you know, our pre-K 6 are with us every day. They would simply collapse their cohorts and be with their teacher all day. But the secondary students, grades 7 through 12, would be in person 5 days a week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that they have been doing that in Chicago. Parents have a choice. And actually in Chicago, 80% of the parents have chosen to keep their kids home. Only 20% have chosen to go into the classroom. Just the thing that bothers me really is that knowing that we can't socially distance, it's not going to be possible. And that there's all these new strains are coming that are much more contagious than the other ones have been. And that's what bothers me, is that it could spread. It could spread very easily with these new strains. So.
Okay, anybody else?
This is my last ditch effort.
Okay.
Very, very small sample size. A family of 5, now a family of 4. All 3 boys contracted COVID. Karen nor I ever contracted COVID. I'll end with that.
Okay, Steve.
Yes, the last thing I would add to this whole thing is I really do share Kevin's concerns. When we set up the hybrid plan, we set it up in place not because it was the absolute best outcome for students, but it was the best outcome for the entire community. We have to measure these things and figure out, you know, there are going to be a lot of parents who do not qualify for vaccination, and they will be subject to catching this. But we have to try it, I think, at this stage. The students need to get back in the classroom, and not because people need daycare, not because we don't want to deal with things, because for their mental well-being and for their education, they're best suited in the classroom. And the risks right now are at a point where we can try it. I think we can safely try it. And to Susan's point, yeah, there are a lot of variants coming through and they may cause all sorts of havoc. If they do, we go back to virtual. We go back to the model, the hybrid model. But in the interest of the best outcome for students, I think it's time to make the effort.
I agree.
Can we do something to make sure that times when kids wouldn't be wearing masks, which I'm talking about lunch, that they be in smaller groups or there's better social distancing during vulnerable times like that? I guess I just don't know what it looks like yet. So I'm just curious more than anything.
I mean, I would say, Diana, I think that there's absolutely going to be an effort that's made. And, you know, we're running more lunches, more different separate lunch sections than we ever had. And you know, again, we're work out through those details, but I know the high school is talking about still doing like 4 separate lunches, for example. The reason that they would do that is to try and ensure that there's more space and that we can clean, you know, between those lunches. But I also, pragmatically speaking, I think we have to be prepared for the very real, you know, the very real possibility that with a building that's got a capacity of 1,600, if we have all grades, you know, 7 through 12 there's 1,300 students. You know, if a quarter of them are eating lunch at a time, you know, you start to do the math on it. We're using spaces beyond the cafeteria to do that, to add to that. So the effort will be there. What it will look like is a little bit hard to, you know, fully embrace until you really start putting that kind of in a map and laying it all out.
Well, again, I will just reiterate, you guys did a fantastic job with the hybrid plan. I'm confident that you'll do a fantastic job with getting kids back in safely for this plan.
Can I just add, I want to make sure we emphasize to kids and maybe redouble our efforts on masking. I'm hearing reports from kids. I mean, it's fatigue. I get the wearing the masks are tough, but I'm hearing, you know, the hallway is not, the kids aren't wearing the masks like they were at the beginning of the year. So I guess that'd be my message if we are going back full time. If we can somehow encourage our kids to keep wearing their masks, especially in places like the hallway or whenever they're not able to be socially distanced as well as they can be.
Good point.
So I guess that brings the question, do we need to have a vote on this, or is there enough guidance here? I guess I'm just curious.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you want us to do?
I think I think this should be a vote, you know, so that it's really clear about where the board, you know, wants to go with this. I think, you know, we've been working hard, you know, all year to have some input, to listen, to try to stay the course, do right by kids, try to understand community demand and expectation. But this would be a significant shift. And I think, you know, Peter's comment about reinforcing, you know, masking is going to have to be part of our message to families as kids come back. And, you know, hearing Barry say that no matter what gets decided, there's going to be some contingency of the community that's, you know, going to not like it. And so I feel like this is one of those sort of big philosophical turning points. And so that's why I listed it as an action item. Okay. Kind of curious that potentially you might get to this spot and then want to take a vote.
So do we want that we direct the administration to move forward with planning for a return to in-person teaching on April 6th of 2021, provided that is feasible.
Second, Taylor.
It's been moved and seconded that we direct Steve and the group to plan to go back on April 6th. Any more discussion? Toby?
Roseanne?
Yes.
Kevin?
No.
Susan?
No.
Peter?
Yes.
Barry?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, it was 5-2. Thank you very much. Okay, Steve, we'll just wait to hear how that's going along then.
Okay, thank you for that direction.
Okay, moving on, we have the Board of Canvassers. So Susan, I think that's you.
It is me. So let's see, the election is April 6th. And we can do the Board of Canvassers. What time? What are the dates? Steve, we have
7th to the 13th.
the 7th to the 13th. Okay. So the way we used to do it is that we would have it like later during the school day. It would be during the school day. Is there anybody here that would be available to be on the Board of Canvassers during the school day? Diane, Roseanne?
Well, it can be adjusted to any time though, right?
Well, right, but I would like it sometime during the school day if it's possible, rather than to have it like 6 at night or 7 at night, because we used to do it about 4:15 or something like that usually. Is there anybody that can make it, say, around 4:15?
I can make it.
You can, Barry. Who else can make it at around that time? Oh gosh. We just need 3 people. Okay, well.
I nominate Kevin Bird.
Kevin. Okay, well, Barry, and who did it last time? Who did it last time? Barry, you were on last time, were you?
I know I've been on previously. I don't know if I was on the last one.
Okay, okay.
I've
Peter?
been on previously.
Yeah,
I think I was on the last one.
Yeah,
Diane, you were.
Yeah.
Peter, were you?
I've never done it.
You've never done it. Okay, Peter, you're on. You've never done it. And let's see, who else?
Kevin's gonna do it, right?
Who else could do it, say around 4:15-ish?
I think Kevin raised his hand.
Kevin, okay, Kevin, come. Be on the Board of Canvassers. Okay, how about Peter and Kevin and me on the Board of Canvassers? And let's do it now. What day is good for you? Thursday the 8th is good for me. Is that good for you guys or not? That's good for Peter. Kevin, does it work for you or not? It does. Okay, so let's do Thursday the 8th at 4:15 at the district office.
Okay, very good.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think that takes care of that. Let's see, canvases. Okay, well, the next thing is just the meeting dates then. The next meeting will be April 5th. Okay, any questions on that? All right, anyone have one last thing before we adjourn? I just want to say it's International Women's Day today. So happy International Women's Day to all the women on the board and to all the wives and so forth at home.
God bless the international women of the world.
Absolutely.
Hey, Roseanne, did you say April 5th for the meeting? Because it should be April 12th, I believe, right?
She said the 8th.
For our board meeting?
I'm sorry, not the board meeting is yeah, she said the 5th.
She did say the 5th, but it should be the 12th, and that would be the reorganization as well.
Oh, okay. Just wait a minute then. I don't have it down here then.
Yes, the 12th.
Personnel is the 12th, correct.
Mm-hmm.
Personnel and the regular meeting will be the 12th. Got it. Okay, thank you. I looked at the wrong line. All right, anything else? Then I look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded, we adjourn. Any discussion? Okay, Toby?
Hey, Roseanne,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Barry,
Well, yes.
Diane,
Yes.
and Taylor.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.
Thanks, everyone. See you next time.